Harlech in North Wales has many buildings which have stood the test of time. But a well-known landmark will soon disappear when the famous tower block at Coleg Harlech will be demolished for a major redevelopment. There is a problem. The refectory contains a huge work by one of Wales's best-known sculptors, Jonah Jones, who died in 2004. The college wants to save the sculpture and is trying to find it a new home. Enter the Royal Commission, which is recording the work before it's taken down. Will the Commission's activities help the sculpture survive? For Commission Surveyor Sue Fielding, it seems like an ordinary day. She's been assigned the job of recording Jonah Jones's sculpture before the demolition men move in. At first, it looks like just another assignment, until Sue sees the scale of the challenge. There are over 800 pieces of Sicilian marble and Welsh slate to record. This in a work measuring 12 metres and weighing several tons. Nor is the sculpture easy to interpret.
Abstract art in the 60s especially was building on the idea that it was open to interpretation. I think that artists were very keen that they explored ideas in their work, but that in the end the viewer could take what they wanted from it. And I like the idea that in a setting like this, which people come to day after day after day, you have something that's a little bit coded, a little bit complex.
Like all the best puzzles, behind the depth of thought lies simplicity of imagery.
I suspect that's the sun coming down over the sea, a sort of sunset effect. And then this semicircle could be a moon.
Like Chinese boxes, the sculpture contains layers of meaning and symbolism. And to their surprise, Peter and Sue discover an inner box.
They've just unlocked this for us, which is great, because hard to believe, but this bottom part of the sculpture actually folds back.
Oh, right.
And they said they haven't opened it for some time, but it's a bar. He must have intended that it could be opened up like this to create the bar. And I think that actually said a lot about the way that Jonah Jones worked. He was a sculptor who believed that an artist's role was to make things for the community.
You know, so it's really to enhance public spaces.
Yes.
I wouldn't drink that if I were you.
Very dusty glasses. Well, they said they had them somewhere.
Ah, missing pieces.
I think we better bring all these out, don't you?
Yeah. Have a look at, see if we can work out where they've come from.
Peter's been told that a detached area is a separate sculpture, but he's not so sure.
I think there are a few mysteries still to solve here, and one of them is the colour. I'm not convinced by either this cream that's on this side or the very pale blue on the other. But where this piece has fallen off, you've got some orange, which is a really 60s colour and really dynamic and would have looked completely different behind the sculpture. The other thing here is that this piece just doesn't belong with the other because it's isolated, and I think, looking at it now, that it was originally seen by Jonah Jones as a 360-degree sculpture. I think it went all the way around here, and when you look along here, this would have been just a railing instead of this blocked-in piece, which has been done for fire regulations, and you could have put your hand out and touched this beautiful sculptured piece here, and the whole thing would have been a tremendous effect.
It's 40 years since Jonah Jones, seen here in a BBC documentary, began working on the sculpture at Coleg Harlech. A master craftsman who was largely self-taught, his work was much sought after. For Jones, art was rooted in the community.
This is where I like best to walk, up in the hills, never far from the quarries and from Portmatic where I work. You could say I scratch a living here, like the quarrymen and the shepherds. Like them, I'd be better off over the hills and far away. But like them, I look for something else here in these hills. I suppose we're both a bit out of our century. All this stuff is timeless anyway.
It received the commission in 1969 and started preparing sketches for it and making plans, and then spent all of that summer and winter preparing the pieces using the machinery there to slice and to cut the slate and the marble, and then transporting it here. And it was completed sometime during the spring of 1970, as I remember.
And you came up at the time to see it being put up? You visited?
Yes, yeah, the whole family was fairly well involved. The building itself was quite remarkable at the time.
According to Naomi, some of the symbolism reflects the tales of the Mabinogi. The contrast between man and nature is fundamental.
We have the natural on the left-hand side of the bridge and then the man-made on the right-hand side. So everything to the left is organic and flowing. We've got natural shapes such as waves and wings and fossils, a fishbone, and then we make the crossing through education to that which man has made. And on the right-hand side then of the bridge, everything is far more regimented and straight-edged and organised, and that represents man's contribution. The top left-hand quadrant of the mandala represents language, and in there you'll notice the letter H, very appropriate for a sculpture sited in a town called Harlech. But also there are other themes pertaining perhaps to a student hall of residence, such as home, happiness, heddwch in Welsh, peace, possibly hiraeth, longing for their own homes. Then the bottom left-hand corner represents music, and in fact that's a representation of the opening theme of Mozart's G minor symphony.
Fascinating insight, because it's a very complicated piece, and I think you've been our symbologist for this, haven't you? It's like the Da Vinci Code is opening up before us.
Absolutely, Dan Brown.
The survey will provide a detailed record of the sculpture before it's dismantled. But according to public art consultant Fiad Stark, finding a new home could be difficult.
First of all, you have to find a proper location for the work. This work is clearly specifically created for this site, it wraps around that central shaft, and so it's hard to find that again. The work has also suffered over time. I think it needs a good restoration, needs cleaning up. But, this building is quite unique. It has big windows on all sides, it's got plenty of light. That would be very hard to find.
As tastes and fashions change, the art of the immediate past is sometimes disregarded, an attitude which distresses the family of Jonah Jones.
We are very worried as a family. More than one major piece has been destroyed in acts of what seem like quite wanton vandalism, quite often organisational vandalism, a roundabout no longer needed, so the sculpture on it not required, a huge wall sculpture in the police headquarters where the foyer needed to be redeveloped, literally ripped off the wall and thrown in a skip. And it would be very, very sad to see this one go. And whatever happens, we as a family hope that it can be housed elsewhere, in Harlech ideally, but if not, somewhere else where people can see it and it can be looked after.
Back at Aberystwyth, Sue has completed her survey and rendered Jones's original sculpture in 3D. Whatever happens, there is now an accurate record of the work.
What we can do is just unfold those pieces so that we see them as a continuous sequence right the way across the 4 elevations. And you can see, which is quite nice, that the shape of the marble pieces is actually continuing around the corners.
It reads very well and rhythmically, doesn't it? And it shows that actually if the only place that could be found for it was in a continuous wall somewhere, it would work really well, wouldn't it?
It would, and it would perhaps make more sense than it does as 3 separate holes, but perhaps that then takes away some of the joy of trying to make sense of it yourself.
The Jonah Jones puzzle. It's fantastic, isn't it? It really gives you a wonderful impression of the sculpture when it was built and shows it in the context. This will be a fantastic record when the building's been demolished to show how that sculpture looked in situ. And I think it's so impressive that it's really going to help to find a new home for this sculpture.